something we all want to hear about, tornadoes. There you go. Thank you.
So I kind of feel like I probably have left out a lot of the, tornadoes, straight line winds that happened in the area, just because I couldn't find them. So I'm hoping at the end of the presentation that we can have some sharing and hear more about those. Tornado Alley. Tornado Alley typically includes the Plains states, from the Dakotas to Texas. However, a new study shows the frequency and severity of tornadoes are actually much more widespread. So Tornado Alley should also include several states in the upper Midwest and Deep South, along with Florida. The area defined as Tornado Alley has changed, growing much farther east to include the states of Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Illinois, Indiana, and Florida. Do we live in Tornado Alley? Iowa has a reputation for being one of the major tornado states. In 1953, Snowden's Flora book, Tornadoes of the United States, indicated that Iowa was the center of tornadic activity. Florida's figures show that Iowa led all the other states in the number of tornadoes recorded per 10,000 square miles of area. As time passed, the center has moved progressively southward from Iowa into Kansas and then into Oklahoma. Oklahoma now has twice as many tornadoes per year than Iowa. Ingredients in the tornado recipe include moisture, dry air layer, and jet stream. A tornado is a funnel cloud that touches the ground. They were often referred to as cyclones in years past. Cyclone is a term given by meteorologists to any air mass that rotates in a cyclonic direction. This motion results from the fact that the Earth is rotating on its polar axis once a day. Imagine a child trying to follow a straight line painted on a rotating merry-go-round. As the child walks along, the merry-go-round moves beneath him and causes his feet to miss the line. This phenomenon is known as the Coriolis effect, and that information was from tornado accounts in Iowa by John Stafford. Damaging wind from thunderstorm is much more common than damage from tornadoes. In fact, many confuse damage produced by straight-line winds and often erroneously attribute it to tornadoes. Here's the science to explain the difference and the common misconceptions. Straight-line wind is a term used to define any thunderstorm wind that is not associated with rotation and is used mainly to differentiate from tornadic winds. A downdraft is a small-scale column of air that rapidly sinks toward the ground. A tornado is a narrow, violently rotating column of air that extends from the base of a thunderstorm to the ground. Because wind is invisible, it is hard to see a tornado unless it forms a condensation funnel made up of water droplets, dust, and debris. How tornadoes form is not fully understood. The most destructive and deadly tornadoes occur from supercells, which are rotating thunderstorms with a well-defined radar circulation called a mesocyclone. The key difference between a tornado and straight-line winds is in two words: in and out. In, all wind flows into a tornado. Debris is often laying at angles due to the curving of the inflow winds, as shown in this picture. Out, all winds flow out from a downburst. Debris is often laying in straight lines parallel to the outward wind flow, hence the term straight line winds. When extensive damage is noted, the National Weather Service may dispatch a damage survey team to determine the cause and nature of wind damage. Survey teams look for evidence of circulation in debris fields to determine if the damage is straight line winds or a tornado. Based on the degree of damage and damage indicators, a maximum wind speed is assigned to either the downburst or the tornado. Why are downbursts often mistaken for tornadoes? Tornado winds range from 40 to over 300 miles per hour. Downburst winds can exceed 165 miles per hour. Straight line winds can exceed 58 miles per hour and can last a considerable amount of time. Wind speeds of 75 plus miles per hour will often sound very loud, leading some to believe that they heard a tornado, when in fact they only heard straight line wind. This is one of the most common mistakes. The fact that trees were twisted off doesn't necessarily mean a tornado has gone through. If you could draw a straight line down a tree, you'd see that the tree isn't exactly alike from one side to the other. Differences in limb and leaves may cause the tree to have more wind resistance on one side than the other, resulting in the twist. If wind speeds are high enough, the tree will begin to tear apart in a twisting motion, even though the winds are relatively straight. And that information was from the National Weather Service. So there's some experiences that I've had with tornadoes that I wanted to share with you, and there were actually three. The first one was around 1991, but now after talking to Mary Kay, maybe that was 1992. That was the year where we lost the trees in front of the library, and actually quite a few people in town in Maquoketa lost their trees. And while this was going on, I believe it was the same day, because my daughter was having a birthday party. We had all these girls at our house who lived at the Carson house at the time. I said, we've got to go downstairs. And of course, you know, it's an old basement, spider webs, you know, we just really didn't use the basement. And so our daughter was pretty mortified, because some of the girls were making comments like, ew, you know, I see spider webs, and, you know, everybody was kind of creeped out. But where they had been playing, there was this bay window, and a tree actually did fall. And if it would have fallen towards the, you know, the window, it actually would have hit the girls where they were at. Does anybody remember that tornado? The one that took out the library trees? Oh. Do you think that was 91 or 92?
I'm not sure. But I do remember it.
So then the next experience that I remember was around 1994. We were moving from one house to another, and so we were working on the other house we were about to move into, which was only about 2 miles away from where we had lived. And so I had a van, and my husband had his truck, and I left first with the van with my young son, and then he was, you know, just not that far behind me. And as he was driving along, but anyway, this is what the sky looked like when we were coming home. This is not the actual picture, but that's what it looked like. And I just remember seeing that cut at an angle and it being green. So when my husband got home with my daughter, she is just like hysterical. I look at his truck. I'm trying to think, it was either $10,000 or $15,000 worth of damage that was done. But what happened, there was a barn along E17, and there was a Schwager barn, and it just exploded right as they were driving by. So he said that at one point he was driving on 2 wheels, and you know, he shoved her head down, you know, to the seat, And, he's just driving as fast as he could, and I thought, it probably was a good thing that didn't happen to me, because I didn't think the van would have been as sturdy. I don't know that I could have held it together, to drive through that. But all of the timbers that pelted from the barn, just the damage that they did, and the one that, really kind of freaked me out was the little metal piece in between your windshield and your side window. That had gotten hit by one of those timbers and was like dented way in. So if it would have just went, a few inches one way or the other, it would have gone through the windshield. So we were pretty lucky on that account. So the next encounter that I had happened in 1998, and really the only reason I happened to be home, it was a Monday morning, was I was sick. I'd just gotten out of the hospital. And so I was watching TV, and all of a sudden, of course, the satellite dish, then I had no reception. Then I happened to look outside, and it's raining, but the rain is not going anywhere. The rain is being suspended like snow flurries, and it just never dropped. It just swirled and swirled. And then I happened to notice our air conditioning unit was tethering like a balloon, and you can see it's off the base there. And so I was just trying to make sense of that. I'm thinking, well, I think those are heavy. That's why, they put cement bases under them. So then it started being slammed against the house. So I thought, maybe now is a good time. I should probably go to the basement. And back in 1998, we really didn't, we didn't use our cell phones. I think pretty sure I had a cell phone then. What I do just before I'm going to go down the steps, I grab the one that's, the cordless phone. And as I walked by to go down the steps, our porch, the back porch, you have to go through that to get to those steps. And I could feel the pressure from the door, from that porch door. It was deadbolted, but you could feel the pressure. It was just like, it was like it wanted to push in, and come and hit me and just knock me down those steps. So I took about 3 steps down, power went out, and I thought, great, I've got this phone now, totally worthless to me. I get downstairs, and just shortly after that, it's totally pitch dark. And again, this is not even quite noon yet, so it's still in the morning. And then I started hearing that terrible, terrible freight train noise, and it was so loud. But what was more disturbing than that was you could hear a rumble. And I don't know if you've ever been around a rumble where something's about to explode, but I had that experience many years before that. And it's like, it sounds like something's going to explode, but at the same time, like, where am I safer? Staying inside, going outside, but there were we had a gas furnace, a gas water heater, and I thought, are those what are going to rumble? And so I just, stayed there, and most of the time I was screaming at the top of my lungs, because it was just so loud, and I just felt like the world was coming to an end. Then while it's still pitch dark, I am getting literally soaked. And so I'm thinking, how can I get wet? Is our house still there? Could not figure that one out. The house was still there, but what had happened, it had driven so much rain in underneath the windowsills, and then that had gone through the hardwood floors from the living room and was getting me wet, standing in the basement. Then finally, it was daylight again. And then figured it still wasn't really safe to go outside, because at that point I could still see large trees flying through the air. We had a sort of like a walkout basement. There's a walkout door and a little well, so I could see those. And then one of the big trees went flying and landed right on the neighbor's house. So when it was over, I called my husband at work. So we just only live 8 miles from town. He was surprised to hear about the tornado, since it wasn't even raining in Maquoketa. So I started giving a play-by-play description. The new shed is gone, I said. So are the silos, and the barn, and the hay shed. He asked about the corn. It was then that I realized all of our corn was knocked down. This is not the actual picture of our corn, but this is what it looked like. So, got every single stalk in the whole farm. All of our store windows were broken and glass scattered all over the yard. There's glass shards embedded in our wooden deck, Straw was driven into the bricks of our house. Mud and debris left on all the windows. All the windows on my van were chipped, but not broken. They called it straight line winds. Unfortunately, the path it took also destroyed a number of century barns in Jackson County. I mean, we lost. It was a really big path. We lost a lot. And for some reason, I could not find any information on that. So then, it's like all this other stuff is gone. We still have our house, grateful for that. And I saw the cemetery. So we lived in the red brick house, and right beside it you can see is a cemetery. We do have family members buried there. And just the year before, our cemetery was the first one for them to hold the workshop. So we had lots of people come. Mr. Maddie came, he was kind of an expert on that, and what had did that damage was we had just taken delivery of a shed that was built by the Amish, and they built us so well, which set such strong timbers, and then the metal parts that adjoined that. Besides the fact that inside that was a cast iron wood stove. So between the combination of those things, you can see the devastation there. It has since been restored, but it just was tragic that had to happen to the cemetery. The Fujita scale was originally developed by Dr. Tessa Theodore Fujita to estimate tornadic wind speeds based on damage left behind by a storm. The enhanced Fujita scale, which is what we use today, was adopted in 2007 to replace the old Fujita scale. Enhanced Fujita scale describes the strength of a tornado based on the amount and type of damage caused by the tornado. The F scale of damage will vary in destruction area. Therefore, the highest value of F scale is recorded for each event. And can all of you read the wind speeds and stuff kind of from there? This map shows the numbers of tornadoes in each state that were rated F5 or EF5. And if you notice, you don't really see it in eastern Iowa, but I wonder if they put those numbers where that storm originated, then as it passed through going to the east. So this data only includes 1980 to around 2022. The deadliest tornadoes occurred May 15, 1968. 5 tornadoes hit Iowa. 2 of them were F5 tornadoes. These 2 storms killed 18 and injured a total of 619. And so when I talk about, the deadliest, and maybe at that time, the information that I was reading, it was the deadliest, so I may mention that again later, that, okay, this was the deadliest. So it's kind of hard to keep all that straight. June 13th, 1976, there was an F5 tornado that destroyed just about every single building in Jordan, Iowa. It was a half-mile wide vortex that stayed on the ground for a staggering 21 miles. Iowa had been hit by a total of 6 F5, now known as EF5, tornadoes, with winds of over 260 miles per hour. No one was injured, a rarity for storms of that magnitude. Parkersburg, Iowa's last EF5 tornado on May 25th, 2008. The twister that ripped through an Iowa town of just 1,000 residents killed 4 of them, destroyed 222 homes, and damaged 400 others. Most of those killed at Parkersburg were in basements. So I was kind of surprised to hear that. All were adults. Iowa's last tornado of that size was the one previously mentioned in Jordan. Prairie Bird, Worthington, Iowa, F4 tornado, March 13, 1990. There were no injuries or fatalities. Per storm data, the hardest hit was Worthington. 26 homes and businesses were damaged and 13 were destroyed. The tornado was approximately 1/2 mile wide as it approached Worthington. The width was down to about 2 blocks in town. South of Hopkinton, 2 farmhouses were destroyed, along with several vehicles. There was over $1 million in damage to a farm in Castle Grove Township. 4 other rural homes were destroyed. A swarm of tornadoes touched down in parts of Iowa on July 14, 2021. It was the first F3 tornado in Iowa since August 20th, 2019, according to NOAA's Storm Events Database. From 1980 through 2019, only 3% of Iowa tornadoes were EF3 or stronger, according to research by meteorologist Craig Coville. There was a F2 tornado that destroyed St. Patrick's Church, Iowa City, Easter week, 2006. An F1 tornado is weak, but has winds as strong as the weakest hurricane. It has wind speeds strong enough to tear off roofing surfaces. Mobile homes can be blown off their foundations and sometimes turned over. Motor vehicles in motion can be blown off the road. Small barns, detached garage, storage sheds can all be destroyed. An EF0 tornado Monday night in Jackson County, and this was posted March 2017. This was in Bernard, Iowa, where they had 95-mile winds per hour. It was a 5.7 mile path that was 25 yards wide. Highest daily totals of tornadoes in Iowa, and this is through 2018. December 15th, 2021, 43. August 31st, 2014, 30. And in 2001, 28. 2022, 26. 2004, 24. 1998, 22, and 2018, 21. The majority of tornadoes took place in central and western Iowa, with only 7 total falling within the counties of the KCRG TV9 viewing area. 3 tracks crossed through parts of Howard County, 2 in Floyd County, 2 in Franklin County, and 1 in Chickasaw County. I need to take a drink. Does anybody want to share a quick tornado? Nancy?
I just want to say, I think it was the 1998 one that was actually a derecho, the straight line wind one, because I remember that green. We were at our office, it was in Mom's basement at that time, and we had the DTN back then, and we're kind of watching this little storm come across Highway 20, and we thought, well, it's just going to keep going east. And then all of a sudden, everything happened. And the sky was green. Les and I ended up going home. We went over to Chuck and Chris's for something, then we headed home and watched it from our basement walkout windows, you know. But when we got back the next day, that little yellow storm that was coming across Highway 20 blew up and turned southwest right toward us. And that goes with that map you had.
Okay.
So that would have been where it originated. But it was, and I didn't even realize it was a derecho until we had the one in Cedar Rapids. But apparently that's what that was, and that would be straight line winds.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was crazy that day. We had a customer there, and he decided to go home, and he got as far as down, and he said, no, you should stay here. Oh, we'll be fine. Young farmer. And he gets down in the flat there, and they just stopped and kind of hunkered down while it went around them. But you can still see where the trees fell then. Yeah, so I think that was a derecho, because it blew, classic actually.
That would make sense.
But the DTN had been frozen right at that point.
Iowa tornado summary from 1950 to 2022. 2021 experienced the highest number of tornadoes in 1 year, which was 146. 1968 had the highest number of injuries. 636 people were injured. 1968 also had the highest number of fatalities, which was 18. March 5th, 2022 was the most severe and was rated EF4. 1986 saw the highest property damage, which was over 500 million. 1995 had the most crop damage, about $2.5 million worth. Looking back 6 decades, which this was a 2018 article, total tornadoes on the biggest tornado day. And you can see why, where Iowa has 28, and there are other states that have considerably more, and some that have a lot less. Another record set from the December 15th, 2021 derecho. This storm produced 17 EF2 or stronger tornadoes in Iowa. All were rated EF2, nothing higher. This sets a new event record for the state, breaking the previous record of 16 EF2 plus tornadoes from June 7, 1984. And again, this is since 1950. Prior to this December outbreak, 51 tornadoes had been confirmed by the National Weather Service in the state for 2021, meaning the total for the year as of December 15, 2021 was 94. The most tornadoes during a month in the state were 57 in May of 2004. Here's another picture showing damage by the derecho, and it was just unreal to see what it did to the grain bins and just anything metal, how the metal was twisted. And if any of you drove around to see that, you could see that twisted metal hanging from the power lines, and it just was incredible. The derecho turned this truck on its side near Coralville. Iowa's worst storms. June 3rd, 1860, 24 dead, 60 injured. A wide swath across Lynn, Cedar, and Clinton counties devastated Pioneer Farms. June 3rd, 1860, 92 dead, 175 injured. 28 people died on farms near DeWitt. 41 died in Comanche, and 23 were on a raft in the Mississippi River. Not a good place to be. April 21st, 1878, 10 dead, 40 injured. A monster black balloon destroyed farms, swept across Storm Lake, and hit the town. April 21st, 1878, 17 dead, 29 injured. Most of the deaths were in Sauk County. A cow was supposedly carried 10 miles. June 17th, 1882, 68 dead and 300 injured. Grinnell, Iowa photo is shown on the slide. This storm occurred at 6:30 p.m. 10 people died near Rippey, 7 in Jasper County, 39 at Grinnell, and 10 at Malcolm. July 6, 1893, 1 dead, 200 injured. 80% of the homes in Pomeroy were destroyed. Deaths occurred in 4 counties. September 21st, 1894, 25 dead, 60 injured. At least 10 farms were leveled in Hancock County, 14 dead. 6 died in Casas County and 5 in Worth County. May 3rd, 1895, that was rated an F5. 15 dead in Carmel, Sioux City. May 24th, 1896, as shown in the picture, 21 dead, 60 injured at the village of Oakwood. Passing 10 miles north of Des Moines, this tornado caused deaths at Bondurant, Valeria, and Mingo. March 23rd, 1913, 25 dead, 75 injured. This tornado hit the south edge of Council Bluffs, killing 17 people. Others died in smaller towns. May 18, 1898, 18 dead, 100 injured. So originally, for this storm or tornado, I just had this one slide because it mentioned that most of the victims were near Riggs, Iowa. I did not realize how close Riggs was really to our area. Bonnie kind of filled me in on that, and I read a presentation that Don Wentworth had given throughout the year now, 2007 maybe, and it explained a little bit more, so now I've got more detail on this. This massive tornado killed 900 head of livestock near Elwood. Most human deaths were near Riggs. At first, I read that, okay. When he presented this, Don, he called it the Devil Tornado of 1898. The newspaper account, fully 30 were killed. Eastern Iowa and part of Wisconsin and Illinois visited by a terrific tornado. Here's some other accounts about the tornado. The scene beggars description. It cannot be told by tongue or pen. For a complete realization of the cyclone's awful effects, a visit along its path is necessary. At Savannah, the storm crossed the river below the Sebula Railroad Bridge, and it's said to have sucked water out of the river. And Don described it as like parting of the Red Sea even, that it just was so unreal. Many hailstones 10 inches in circumference were found, and there were even some that measured 13.5 inches. Chickens, dead and living, were deplumed and looked half ready for the cook. Skin of a hog was picked up, which was removed from the animal as neatly as if done by a butcher. Many articles have been found in the fields removed from the cyclone's course, some of them indicated by addresses that they came a great distance. Pillows, sheets, tablecloths, mortgages, notes, insurance policies, women's wearing apparel, etc. have been found, some of which have been believed to have been found from the vicinity of Maquoketa. This is, although there were other, tragedies, this one just really got to me when I found out about this. Charles and Nettie Flory were married August 21st, 1894, and were the parents of Wayne, age 4, McKinley, and Hobart, age 2. So I would assume they're twins. The Florys' farm buildings were destroyed, and their home was torn to pieces. The family was crushed to death under the falling walls. They are buried in Vernon Prairie Cemetery, Clinton, Iowa. Nettie had 5 siblings to mourn this family's loss. Her mother had died, though, in 1893, and her father died a few years later at age 62. Other tragic deaths include Adam Hildebrandt. Adam Hildebrandt was a hired man on Lucille Sorensen's grandfather's farm. Adam was the oldest of 6 children. His mother had died in 1883, and her maiden name was Cornelia, and was related to the Cornelius family of Jackson County. And Nancy, that's your relative, correct? Adam was in the field with another farmhand when people observed them being picked up by the tornado. William Heinrich Green was also killed by the tornado. He was 21 years old. Both young men are buried in Andrews Cemetery. And in Don Wentworth's account, he talked about how there's a lot of misinformation out there about those two young boys, that actually they had no family, but that is not true. Another victim was Obadiah, or possibly his name is Joseph Obadiah Allison of Delmer, was another victim. He was just 19 years old and the third youngest of 11 children. His father's parents had both just died the year before. Now his father had lost his barn, his son, and his wife and other family were badly injured. This tornado also devastated the Henry Smith residence, located near Sunfish Lake Drain. When the Smith farm was demolished, Grandfather Jeffries, who was in the cellar, was found to be covered about the head with fluid resembling blood. It was feared that he was fatally injured, but a closer investigation proved it to be a juice of canned raspberries. And actually there were quite a few other accounts where I read kind of a similar thing because of all these, preserves, whether, some type of red berries. And so you can imagine the relief then, when they found out their family member, wasn't blood. South of Shannon, it destroyed the Johnson place. In Clarence, the Deakey house was destroyed. Emerson barn in Massillon was destroyed. Also destroyed was the Sawyer barn, and location of that I wasn't able to determine. The Peters home before and after the tornado, and this home is located east of Lanark. May 21st, 1819, F5 tornado, Carroll County, 4 dead. June 3rd, 1925, also an F5, Yorkshire, Harrison County, 1 dead. In 1953, Anita Cass County, 1 dead. October 14th, 1966, 6 dead and 172 injured. A tornado hit Belmont where about 600 homes and 75 businesses were destroyed or damaged. May 15th, 1968, 13 dead, 450 injured. A huge funnel passed directly through Charles City, destroying 337 homes and damaging 1,500. May 15th, 1968, 5 dead, 156 injured. Homes were leveled and swept away at both Owine and Maynard, both in Fayette County. 1976, Jordan, Boone, Iowa. No fatalities, and there was a slide for that shown earlier in the program. 1978, 6 dead, 45 injured. A father and daughter died in a trailer south of Laurel. 4 died at a truck stop. 1979, 3 dead, 26 injured. 2008, Parkersburg, Butler County, 9 dead, and that slide was shown earlier. Near Winterset, Iowa, March 2022, an EF4 tornado. 4 of the 7 people killed in this storm that tore through central Iowa were members of the same family, who were huddled together in the pantry of a home that was razed by the powerful tornado. The home did not have a basement. Family members said the children's mother, 8-year-old son, grandfather, and uncle survived the storm but were injured. The children and their parents from Blue Springs, Missouri, were visiting their grandmother, Melissa Basley, 63, when the tornado hit. The storm killed Basley, 37-year-old Michael Bolger, and 2 of his 3 young children. The children who lost their lives were 5-year-old Kinley Bolger and 2-year-old Owen. So Michael's wife lost her mother, her husband, and 2 children in this storm. What are the odds of a tornado striking? Studies on the frequency of tornadoes reports indicate that a given point in Iowa is visited by a tornado about once every 2,000 years. The actual chance of a person being caught in a tornado is much smaller than many believe. The chances of a person dying in an automobile accident are far greater than being killed by a tornado. The good news is that Jackson County is at a moderate risk area for tornadoes. According to records, the largest tornado in the Jackson County area was an F4 in 1965. That caused 3 injuries and 1 death. Tornado risk is calculated from the destruction path that has occurred within 30 miles of the location. Iowa State University has revealed that there are 2 types of tornadoes. To the eye, they look the same. The difference is one type approaches from the southwest. 70% of Iowa tornadoes are this type. They tend to occur in the spring and early fall. Most of the others come from the west or northwest. They tend to occur in the summer months of late June, July, and August. Some tornadoes are atypical or hidden. The greatest fatality-producing tornado in history was the 1925 tri-state tornado, which traveled through Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana. Probably part of the reason for the 695 deaths by this storm was the fact that over much of its path, no funnel was visible. No funnel was seen along its entire track across the state of Illinois. The base of the parent storm cloud was apparently so low to the ground, the amount of debris and dust so great, and the width of the tornado so wide was 1/2 to a mile in width, that the funnel may have just looked like a wall of darkness moving across the landscape. Oh, I was off a slide, wasn't I?
Yeah.
There we go. Boone, Iowa. Oops, that was, did I just have? Did I read that already? Okay, good. Iowa's tornado season? Did I? No. While tornadoes can occur in Iowa any month of the year, conditions are most favorable in the spring and summer months. Fewer tornadoes happened in the winter for lack of moist air. They can occur at all hours of the day, but are most prevalent during the late afternoon or early evening hours. December 14, 1975, the first Iowa December tornado in nearly a century cut an intermittent path 9 miles long near Macokota. Considerable damage occurred on several farms. Boone, Iowa, 1918, and Fonda, Iowa, 1921, showing the devastating damage caused by tornadoes. And then a couple of weeks ago, I read in the Way Back When column, Sentinel Press, it said 80 years ago, high winds destroyed a new barn on the Ed McCarran farm near Andrew, and also destroyed a hog house, chicken house, and brooder. 5 hogs were killed and other livestock injured. More than 300 chickens escaped injury. The house was not damaged as wind of almost tornado proportions struck the vicinity. There was an outbreak in Iowa, May 4th through May 8th, 1964. On the 4th, there were 3 tornadoes. There were all rated F2, and on the 5th, an F3. On the 7th, 2 were F1, 4 were F2, and 1 was an F3. On May 8th, 2 tornadoes, 1 in F2 and 1 in F3. Orchard, Iowa, 2008, experienced heavy rainfall powerful winds and hail, and a funnel cloud touched down. Rainbow tornado occurred August 2021 at 2:48 p.m. in northwest Iowa. There was substantial damage, but no injuries had been reported. This map shows the average annual frequency of tornadoes in the U.S. Jackson County, as shown in orange, had an annual tornado occurrence of 5. This figure is per 10,000 square miles. This data was compiled between the years 1950 and 1995. Tornado frequency has increased in the Midwest and Southeast and decreased in the central and southern Great Plains. March 31st, 2023. Okay, and originally I just had my program done and I just had one slide for this, kind of talking about the one in Bellevue. And then I found out there were 30. There were 30 that day. We were driving by Iowa City and I took a picture of some of the damage. But here's the tornado outbreak of March 31st, 2023. Tornadoes, 11 injuries. And you can see most of them were kind of in the middle, you know, an EF1 or an EF2. Still, that's a lot of tornadoes. The strongest tornado developed southwest of Keota and moved northeast towards Wellman, Iowa, and then finally dissipated in southwestern Johnson County. So the EF4 rated one had wind speeds of around 170 miles per hour. So I've got information about some of the tornadoes. I didn't list all 30 of them. But the first tornado occurred in Bennett and was rated EF2. It flipped a semi along Interstate 80, damaged several concrete block silos, and caused tree damage. Tornado number 2, Charlotte, was rated EF2. It damaged several houses. In Grand Mound, a whole house was shifted off its foundation and almost completely collapsed. 3 people were trapped in this house, and 1 was transported to the hospital with minor injuries. I remember hearing someone talk about this lady's son had called her on her cell phone and she was rushing home, and she got stopped because she was speeding, and then when she told, the mother said, you know, tornado just hit her house, he didn't give her a ticket. Tree damage and snap power poles also occurred, as well as damage to barn and outbuildings. Tornado number 3, Bellevue, was rated an EF1, and I'm sure most of you have heard about this one. This tornado impacted an RV park and some cabins nearby. Trees were uprooted. This confirmed tornado in Jackson County was rated EF1 with 105 miles per hour winds. The path was 5.5 miles and the width was 100 yards. Damage done by that tornado is shown by a drone photo. One of the tiny homes blew into the river with 2 occupants, one of whom could not swim. That person was rescued by Dan Blichton with a 50-foot garden hose. Tornado 4, Andrew. A shed roof and walls were destroyed. Tree damage occurred. Number 5, Coralville to Solon, was rated EF2. This tornado heavily damaged a warehouse, flipped several trailers on a truck, damaged a retail building, collapsed a radio tower, and lifted a roof off a home. Tornado number 6, Hills, Iowa. And I took, I'll get to that picture in a minute. The greatest damage was seen in the western portions of hills, where roofs were completely torn off, siding removed, and large outbuildings destroyed. And that's the picture I took as we were driving by it. Tornado number 7, Martinsburg, rated EF3, caused damage to a house in northeast Martinsburg and additional damage to farmsteads and outbuildings. Mediapolis, rated at EF2, destroyed siding and shingles, had large limbs fall on mobile homes, damaging their roofs. Number 10, Solon. A farmstead lost 2 outbuildings. Power poles were snapped in a field and roof damage was done. Vinton, rated EF2, farm buildings, trees, and power poles damaged. Tornado 24, Keota to Wellman. This violent tornado severely damaged several homes. A car was lofted in the air and tossed 1,000 feet. It also knocked over a 325-foot cell phone tower. Tornado number 29, Wyoming. It moves through the east side of town, damaging trees. Twisted metal was lofted into the fire department parking lot. Did anybody see that? There's a picture. Wrong picture? Wyoming. Tornado number 30, Fulton, was rated an EF1. Damage to outbuildings at 2 farmsteads were reported. Eyewitnesses said they heard a roar. We don't live that far from Fulton, and I did not hear the roar. Now here's another one that just really, you just find out what people went through, and it's just heartbreaking. So when I was researching for Pioneer and the Heritage Farms, I came across this. Actually, oh, that's just not showing up very well. 105-year-old farm wife, Effie Greiner, recalls pioneer days in Iowa and Minnesota. And this article is from 1992. Not a very good picture here, but showing a picture of Effie. While living in Iowa on July 2nd, 1913, when a promising crop was totally ruined during the 30-minute hailstorm, which also killed chickens and pigs, devastated outbuildings, destroyed the garden, smashed the house windows, and it gets worse. And then the lightning killed the horses and the cows. Having lost so much in the storm, the family then moved to Litchfield, Minnesota. Yearning to be back in Iowa, the family resettled on a Greiner farm near Blairsburg, Iowa, which is kind of shown where Blairsburg is at. And then a month after that, they returned, World War I broke out. So I was kind of curious about this family just to check to see, if that farm is still in the family. So I found a listing for a Century Farm owned by the Greiner family that's been owned since 1886. Mrs. Greiner's maiden name was Doolittle. Her father had bought a farm in 1884, and there were 3 Doolittle farms also recognized as centuries or heritage. Effie Greiner lived to be 106, and this is her obituary. Daughter of Royal and Annie Brown Doolittle, was born on a farm in Liberty Township, Iowa. On January 17, 1906, she married Charles Greiner at her parents' home in Liberty Township. The couple farmed near Blairsburg. In 1941, they moved to Weber City. They had 4 sons and 2 daughters. So I found an application for a Century Farm that was filled out by Charles and Effie's son, Lyman. But he died in 2005, but he had 3 sons. So I have to believe that that's probably Effie's farm, because that was the one that Charles' grandfather Holbert Luther Griner had purchased in 1886. So there's many parcels of farmland. So not sure if everybody knows about this, but Jackson County does have an alert system. By signing up, you can receive weather watch information for various categories, including excessive heat, severe thunderstorm, wind chill, flash flood, storm watch, winter storm, flood, and tornado. You can receive alerts for any of the communities in Jackson County. There was a sign on a destroyed home that was destroyed by a Kentucky tornado, and it read, "Chicken Little was right." In 1984, a Minnesota bus driver with just one student saw a tornado coming, and they ran 100 feet away and lay in a ditch. As they lay in the ditch, the bus was picked up. The first grader's comment was, "Boy, have I got something for show and tell tomorrow." Would anyone like to share any experiences that they've had?
I have a relatively funny one from the bed and breakfast.
Do you want me to try and bring them up?
It would have been in probably the 1998 tornado. Sunday afternoon, and I had a guest that was dropped off at the bed and breakfast. They got there by I'll keep this kind of short, but anyway, Squires Manor, I think it was probably the 1998. We had a guest dropped off at the bed and breakfast, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They had just gotten married. They were going to be there for 3 days. About 2 hours after they got there, tornado came through. And it did a lot of damage. The only way we could get out of Squires Manor was to go south and then east on Pleasant Street. No, sorry. East on Pleasant Street to get out of there because we were blocked both ways. Anyway, we went up and knocked on the door. We have a tornado warning. No response. No response. Please, answer the door. We have a tornado warning. Finally, they opened the door a crack. I said, "You need to come downstairs. We'll take you down to the basement. We have a tornado warning." 15 minutes later, they finally came down. We took them down to the basement. We survived the tornado, lost electricity. And so they didn't have a car. They couldn't go anywhere for supper. I had some cold meat, sandwich stuff, and some leftovers in the refrigerator. We fed them supper. Took them out for breakfast the next morning. And we went for 2 days with no electricity. They were perfectly happy. They had a wonderful time. It was just really kind of a funny story. Okay.
Nothing else to do but
That's okay. It was from in the 70s. I was 8 years old, and we lived on a farm near Bellevue. And all day the sky was green, no birds were chirping. It was really weird. And here comes the tornado. My mom and dad, we were all doing chores we had a big chicken house. We had 20,000 bird chicken house. We were doing chores, and we said, "We gotta get to the basement." So we run to the basement and pull my mom's hand, and I lost it. And all of a sudden I felt myself going up in the air, and they found me 2 miles away, laying on hay bales. But I wasn't hurt. I just had a little scratch, and it was just really weird. And when I come back to the farm, my dad had just built a brand new pole building. Everything was all up except for the sides, and it took it and lifted it up and set it right straight down in the pond. So it was just like they built it in the pond. But yeah, I mean, all I remember is just kind of being swept away. Like, it was weird. But yeah, so that's my experience. Yeah, I just remember being just lifted up, and it's like I had no control. So, yeah. Yeah,
it won't reach to you. You kind of remember you having feelings. I just remember being like floating.
Megan was right in the middle of the derecho that happened a couple years ago. I mean, it came right at their farm, and they lost so many trees. They have an acreage outside McKinneyville. But she was at work that day, and it started coming up, and so they went in the corner. She worked at the FSA office in Marion. And so they got in the corner of the building, and all of a sudden, the back wall was gone. So they all jumped in their car, or they got in their car and they went across the street to the police station. I mean, it's just across the street a little bit. And she was sitting in her car, and the back window shattered. And she says, "Mom, I've never been so scared in all my life." And Megan is not scared of anything. And then she couldn't get a hold of Andrew. Turns out Andrew was over by Tipton in his warehouse. Part of that warehouse went in, and he joked, he says, "Why couldn't the part of the warehouse with my pickup have gone down?" Because he wanted a new pickup. But anyway, and of course, the kids were at the babysitter, and she couldn't call anybody. She couldn't get home because there were wires and trees down everywhere. And it took them quite a while to get cleaned up, but they lost a lot of trees. The house, the corner of the house, the tree came down on it. It was just crazy. So, and there you know Megan, she does not get scared.
I feel like there's somebody else who shared a tip.